3 chilling winter horror stories to keep you up all night. Winter is a season of serene beauty, but beneath the pristine snow lies a chilling darkness. These are not just stories, they are experiences that will leave you questioning every shadow in the snow. Tonight, we delve into the heart of winter's darkness. Prepare yourselves, for the cold you feel will be more than just the weather. Deep in the Colorado Rockies, nestled among towering pines and blanketed in a thick layer of freshly fallen snow, stood a solitary cabin. It was a place of serene beauty, where the silence was only broken by the occasional rustle of the wind through the trees or the distant call of a bird. The cabin, with its rustic charm and inviting warmth, seemed like a perfect escape from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. It was the perfect winter getaway for Michael, an avid hiker seeking solace from the city's clamor. He had been looking forward to this trip for months, eager to immerse himself in the tranquility of nature and leave behind the stress of his daily routine. The first 2 days passed without incident. Michael spent his time exploring the surrounding woods, marveling at the untouched beauty of the snow-covered landscape. He felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. But on the third day, he noticed something strange. A line of footprints leading up to the cabin door. They weren't his. The sight of them sent a shiver down his spine, a stark reminder that he was not as alone as he had thought. They were too large, too deep, and they vanished as abruptly as they appeared. It was as if whoever, or whatever had made them had simply disappeared into thin air. That night, as darkness fell and the wind howled like a banshee, Michael heard a scraping sound outside his window. It was a sound that seemed to cut through the howling wind, sending chills down his spine. The footprints were back, closer this time, almost touching the cabin wall. The realization that something was out there, watching him, filled him with a sense of dread. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Michael decided to set up a few trail cameras around the cabin the next day. He hoped the cameras would capture whatever was leaving the footprints and put his mind at ease. That night, as the fire crackled and shadows danced on the cabin walls, Michael kept a watchful eye on the footage from the cameras displayed on his laptop. He was determined to find an explanation for the strange occurrences. Just as Michael was about to give up and call it a night, a flicker of movement on the screen caught his eye. His heart raced as he leaned in closer, trying to make out what it was. There, in the grainy footage captured by the camera facing the front door, was a figure standing at the edge of the trees. It was barely visible, shrouded in darkness, but unmistakably there. The figure was tall and shrouded in shadow, its features indistinguishable, but it was undoubtedly watching the cabin. Michael felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. Michael watched in horror as the figure took a step closer, then another, its movements slow and deliberate, almost predatory. Each step seemed to echo in the silence of the night. He frantically switched to the camera positioned at the side of the cabin, his blood running cold as he saw the figure again, this time just inches from the window. It was peering into the cabin, its gaze fixed on Michael. Panic surged through Michael. He felt trapped, with nowhere to run and no one to call for help. The isolation that had once been so appealing now felt like a prison. Night after night the figure returned, always watching, always lurking just beyond the reach of the camera lenses. Michael's fear grew with each passing night, his sense of security eroding away. Then, one particularly stormy night, as the wind howled and the snow fell in blinding sheets, the power went out. The cabin was plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the occasional flash of lightning. Plunged into darkness, Michael huddled by the fireplace, the dying embers casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. He felt a sense of impending doom, as if something terrible was about to happen. The intruder wasn't outside the cabin. Michael's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the horrifying truth. It was inside, and it had been there the entire time, lurking in the reflections, a chilling embodiment of his growing paranoia and fear. The realization that he had been watched from within the cabin all along was more terrifying than anything he had ever imagined. The blizzard raged on, a relentless onslaught of wind and snow that swallowed the world in a blinding whiteout. The storm was one of the worst in recent memory, with visibility reduced to almost nothing and the roads becoming treacherous. Thomas, a seasoned snowplow driver, battled the elements, his massive vehicle a beacon of light in the swirling chaos. He had been on the job for over a decade, and yet, each storm brought its own unique challenges and dangers. It was during one of these monotonous passes that Thomas spotted it. A lone car, a dark silhouette against the blinding whiteness, parked haphazardly in the middle of the road. The sight was unusual and immediately set off alarm bells in his mind. Concerned for the driver's safety, Thomas pulled his plow up behind the car, its flashing lights casting an eerie glow on the deserted highway. The scene was surreal, almost like a ghostly apparition in the middle of the storm. He stepped out into the biting wind, his boots crunching on the snow, and approached the car cautiously. Each step felt heavier as the snow tried to pull him back, but he pressed on, driven by a sense of duty and concern. The wind howled around him, whipping the snow into a frenzy, making it difficult to see. It was as if the storm itself was trying to keep him away from the car. He tapped on the driver's side window, but there was no response. The glass was frosted over, making it impossible to see inside. The car was silent except for the howling wind. It was eerily quiet, as if the storm had swallowed any other sounds. He tried the handle, surprised to find it unlocked. The door creaked open, revealing the dark, cold interior. The interior of the car was freezing, the air thick with the smell of stale cigarettes. Frost had formed on the windows and dashboard, adding to the sense of abandonment. The keys were still in the ignition and a half-eaten burger lay on the passenger seat, now a frozen, unappetizing lump. It was as if the driver had left in a hurry, not bothering to take anything with them. It was as if the driver had vanished into thin air. There were no signs of struggle or any indication of where they might have gone. Thomas checked the back seat and the trunk, but there was no sign of the driver or any indication of what might have happened to them. The mystery deepened with each passing moment. Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. The cold was biting, but it was the eerie emptiness that truly unsettled him. He quickly retreated to his plow, the wind whipping at his back, urging him to leave. The storm seemed to grow more intense, as if it was trying to push him away from the scene. He radioed the local police, reporting the abandoned vehicle, his voice tight with unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As he pulled away, he couldn't help but steal one last glance at the abandoned car, now a shrinking silhouette in his rearview mirror. The image stayed with him, haunting his thoughts. One evening, as Thomas returned home from a long shift, the headlights of his truck illuminated something strange at the end of his driveway. His heart skipped a beat as he recognized the shape. It was a car, parked at the edge of the woods bordering his property. The sight was both familiar and unsettling. The car was caked in mud and snow, but even in the dim light, Thomas recognized the dented bumper and the faded paint. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of it. It was the same car he had found abandoned on the highway weeks earlier. The realization sent a shiver down his spine, leaving him with more questions than answers. Chapter 3: The Christmas Eve Caller. Christmas Eve had always been a magical time for the Harrison family, a time for laughter, love, and the creation of cherished memories. The air was always filled with the scent of pine and freshly baked cookies, and the sound of carols played softly in the background. This year, they decided to escape the hustle and bustle of the city and celebrate in a secluded winter lodge nestled deep in the snowy wilderness of Vermont. The lodge was a picturesque wooden cabin surrounded by towering pine trees and blanketed in a thick layer of snow. The first few days passed in a blur of snowball fights, snowman building, and cozy evenings spent by the fire, sipping hot chocolate and sharing stories. The children's laughter echoed through the cabin, and the warmth of the fire created a perfect holiday ambiance. Christmas Eve arrived, blanketing the landscape in a fresh layer of snow, the silence of the woods punctuated by the occasional crackle of a distant branch. The world outside seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for something magical to happen. As the snow fell softly outside, blanketing the world in a serene silence, the phone rang, shattering the peaceful atmosphere. The sudden sound was jarring, a stark contrast to the tranquil scene outside. Emily, the youngest of the Harrison family, jumped up to answer it, her laughter echoing through the room. She was always the first to react, her excitement infectious. "Merry Christmas Eve," she chirped into the receiver, her face beaming with holiday cheer. Her voice was filled with the innocence and joy that only a child could possess, but her smile quickly faded, replaced by a look of confusion, then concern. The change in her expression was immediate and unsettling. "Hello? Who is this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The room seemed to grow colder as she waited for a response. The only response was a muffled static, a grating sound that sent chills down her spine. It was as if the caller was deliberately trying to unsettle her. She hung up, attributing the strange call to a prankster, but the unsettling feeling lingered, casting a shadow over the festive atmosphere. The family exchanged worried glances, trying to shake off the eerie feeling. Minutes later, the phone rang again. This time, the sound was even more ominous, as if it carried a warning. This time, John, the father, answered it, his brow furrowed with annoyance. He was determined to put an end to the prank. "Hello? Who is this? This isn't funny," he said, his voice firm, trying to ward off any potential pranksters. His tone was authoritative, leaving no room for nonsense. However, as he listened to the voice on the other end, his annoyance morphed into unease. The voice was unlike anything he had ever heard. The voice was distorted, masked by what sounded like a cheap voice changer, making it impossible to discern if it belonged to a man or a woman. It was eerie and unsettling, but it was the words, spoken in a slow, deliberate tone, that sent shivers down John's spine. Each word was carefully chosen to instill fear. "Merry Christmas, John. Enjoying your stay at the lodge?" The familiarity in the voice was chilling. John's blood ran cold. How did the caller know his name, know where they were staying? The realization hit him like a ton of bricks, and the festive spirit of the evening was replaced by a growing sense of dread. 3 stories, 3 chilling reminders that winter's beauty hides a darker side, where isolation, snow, and shadows combine to create nightmares. A lone cabin in the woods became a prison of paranoia, the reflection of fear itself, the true horror. The open road transformed into a path of pursuit, the snowplow driver forever haunted by glowing eyes and a chilling warning. And a family's Christmas Eve celebration descended into a terrifying game of cat and mouse, the festive cheer shattered by the chilling realization that their tormentor was closer than they thought. If you enjoyed these bone-chilling tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more terrifying stories from Phantom Files.